All right, welcome to our Wednesday's Real Talk on Real Estate. And we're talking today about scaling from single family development to multifamily development. If you're looking at scaling from single family investments like fix and flips, the BRRRR strategy, single family rental homes to multifamily, then this is for you. I'm getting ready to head out to Hawaii tomorrow, and so I'm going live, and I'm going live from my truck because I want a gym workout before I get on that plane, and I get bottlenecked on my workout. So priorities first, but I need to get you guys taken care of. And I want to talk to you guys today a little bit about scaling from residential to multifamily development and even commercial development. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things is mindset is huge when you're talking about scaling from residential to commercial real estate in general. Most people get bottlenecked in the fact that they think commercial real estate is extremely expensive. I think the one thing that benefited me most when I first started investing in commercial real estate is the fact that I was forced to invest in commercial real estate. And take this like a grain of salt, because I want to get into some really some hard details of how you guys can scale from residential to multifamily, but this might help you. This story. When I first had my construction company, I was buying residential single-family rental homes because I wanted assets that produced rental income, and I had something that was tangible to show for my money. Because as most of you guys know that have heard my story, I had went through financial catastrophe in 1997, from making over $250,000 a year in the direct sales industry down to zero. The FTC shut down the company that I was a distributor for, and it was catastrophic because I had overlived, I had overspent. And so I told myself I'd never put myself in that position again. And one of my ploys of being able to do that was to get into the single family residential market and buy rental homes, because I had an asset that was tangible in my eyes. And one thing that happened is when I opened my construction company, my neighbors took me to court. I was forced to get out of my house, but I had a concept that I didn't want to pay rent because I was already there for free. So I thought that if I bought a building bigger than what I needed, I could rent the space and I'd be able to have the tenants pay for it on my behalf, and I'd still have free rent. And that was as simple as the concept was for me. And I did this in direct sales. We used to have training centers, and I would rent office space, and then I would rent desk space to my distributors, and it would pay for my office rental. My office landed up costing me zero, and we would actually make money at the end of the month. And so I use that exact same concept to get into retail. Now, so I never really had a scale to get into commercial, because here's the thing. One thing that most people don't realize is that with commercial assets versus residential, one of the biggest components that banks look for is income. So if you see an empty building and you're driving down the street, it's on a main corridor where there's a high traffic count, there's a good chance that that's a good piece of real estate to lease, even if it's physically distressed. And the caveat to this is the fact that not only is it good lease, but the caveat in regards to the value is the fact that the value is typically diminished because it has no income. So to a bank, it holds zero value, which means that you can get owner financing a lot of times, and a lot of times the seller doesn't know what owner financing is. But your threshold to get into commercial real estate is through your means to educate them that they, the owner, that own this distressed piece of commercial real estate that can't be financed to the bank unless you put an extremely high down payment down on it, and most people don't have, most buyers aren't willing to do. That's why these buildings sit empty for so many years, is that they could be the bank for you. And there's no credit checks. There's very little money that you have to come to the table with for a down payment. And so you negotiate, because a lot of times that owner that owns that piece of real estate hasn't made money on that building for years. It's been empty. And if it hasn't been empty, their tenant is subpar and they're not paying a lot of money. And so most of the time that building has become a liability, and that's why they want to sell it, because they're sitting there servicing property taxes on that property, and probably some utilities, and probably insurance if they're smart. And so because of those expenses, they just want to mitigate their risk. They're sick of bearing the expenses, no matter how small it is. Even if you're throwing $1,000 a month away on property taxes, it's a lot of money. Even if you're throwing $150, $300 a month away on insurance, it's still a lot of money when that asset isn't bringing you anything in. And in fact, it's not an asset, it's a liability. So you can have the ability to get into commercial real estate by finding these properties. And when you find them, you just negotiate them. And the sweet spot is under $70 a square foot nationwide, guys, because they're not worth any more than that, and you're going to have to put a little bit of money into them to be able to get them leasable. And so you could do it on an owner finance contract, and then you can get like a bridge loan or an investor to put $40,000, $50,000 into a small building to make that building look respectful and nice on the front end, and then lease it. Okay, now multifamily. Let's go into multifamily. That's how I got into commercial, because the commercial side gave me the confidence to get into multifamily. And multifamily was more of a repositioning of mindset and asset investments, because the retail was getting killed. And so in 2008, I was getting killed in retail. Even the stuff that was less expensive, I was leasing it, and I was leasing it for a really good price to people, and I was making money on it, but it wasn't making me home runs. And not only was it not making me home runs, the stuff that was nice was killing me. I was getting killed with it. So I wanted to position myself where I could go in and I had more residual income, because the whole reason I got into retail was for residual income, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason you're watching this is because you're sitting back, when I have residential, I want to get into multifamily or commercial or something else, but how do I get into it? I want the passive income. I don't want to have to work the rest of my life. And that's one thing I know about people that are viewing this, is it isn't because they want to go in and say, I want to get into multifamily because it's bigger and it's more work and I want to work harder. It's because they know that if they do, they can get more passive income, because there's more doors and there's more bandwidth for cash flow. And cash flow rules everything, ladies and gentlemen. So one of the big things is, how do you get there? Okay, now here's what we did. And this is what we teach. Now, I know a lot of you guys don't build homes, okay? But I use building homes as a tool. And I tell you, you can go in and you could build 4 single family homes. In fact, let me get a calculator out, because I want to go through this with real numbers, and I'll just do this organically with you guys. I've done this so many times that let's do this organically, and let's take a look at the raw numbers, ladies and gentlemen. So typically my business model on single family development are somewhere between 23 and 2,500 square foot homes. So on these, we typically sell them for between $700,000 and $800,000. I typically net a little over $200,000 net on every house that I sell, but I'm the broker. I am the general contractor, and so because of those two things right there, I usually net more than the average person. Now, if you're somebody getting started and you're new and you're fix and flipping homes, you can hire a general contractor, and you might not make $220,000 on every build like we do, but you can make about $150,000 on a build hiring a general contractor. And for most people, with one single family build that can be done in 5 to 6 months, that's a home run. And when you do one, typically I always tell people, like, it's stupid not to do 2 at a time. But when you're new, you want to get your feet wet, right? You want to understand the process. You don't want to get in over your head. So I always recommend people just do 1 when you first start. But then after you do that 1 and your confidence and bandwidth goes, do 2. Because then at the exact same time, even if you're hiring a contractor and you only make $150 per house, I say like most people are sitting back, most people don't even make $150,000 a year. You could make this in 5 to 6 months. But let's say you do 2 of them. That's $300,000. And if you do this twice in 1 year, that $300,000 net turns into $600,000 net. But let's say you're not as good as what we teach because you haven't done it yet, and it's just going to take you a little bit longer. And let's say it takes you an additional full year to do that. But in 2 years, you do 4 homes. And now you're making $150,000 per home. That's $600,000. Okay? So when you follow me here, this is how you scale. Most people sit back and they buy a new car. They're out with a new BMW, a new Mercedes, or a $100,000 Denali like I'm driving, or something stupid that they don't need, right? Like, these are now tax write-offs. We buy expensive cars because we need them for tax write-offs, and I buy big ones because of the farming and agricultural tax laws, because I want them to be able to write them off, right? And so one of the big things that we do is we depreciate these things down to 0. But one of the things is, you don't need to be buying this crap. Stay in your car that's functional. Stay doing what you've been doing and utilize that money and keep it in the bank. Now, one thing that I did, and I'm not going to tell you guys to do this, you guys need to consult with your CPA and accountants to see if it's worth it. I did an extension on my taxes, and I paid penalties and interest, and here's why. Because I was able to scale. Okay, having that liquidity of money in my bank account meant more to me than the late fees that the IRS was charging me. And the IRS guys, they're like the mafia, man. Like, these guys, Late fees and penalties are expensive through the IRS. So I tell you guys, please consult with your CPA and accountant before you do this. At the time, it just made sense for me to be able to go in and scale. So instead of paying my taxes at the end of the year, I rolled them and revolved my profits into a second year. And then after the second year, then I was able to, I went back and I paid my taxes, my penalties, my interest, everything, until I learned how to get into big assets. Then I was able to cost segregate, take depreciation, and then I was able to reduce my tax liability substantially, and in some cases almost down to zero, if not down to zero. Okay, that's what the wealthy do. That's what developers do. That's what investors do, and you can too. Okay, now you take this $600,000 that you make from 4 homes. Okay, 4 homes. And instead of spending it, instead of paying your taxes, now I'm not telling you not to pay your taxes. I'm just telling you what I did, okay? But we always pay them. You always pay them at the end. You have to. It's inevitable. You're going to pay penalties and interest on it. But I took that $600,000 and I invested that money into buying a piece of land. Now, not all $600,000. I invested about $100,000 into buying a piece of land. And so I took a $1.5 million piece of land. I put $100,000 down as earnest money, which is your escrow money, as a deposit, saying, "Hey, I'm qualified and I'm committed, and I'm buying this piece of land." Okay, and then you go in and you put that you have this $1.5 million piece of land that you have tied up. I don't buy the land yet, but I'm going to buy the land. All I'm trying to do is buy time. Now, people will say, well, isn't it a lot of risk to do all this work without owning the land? No, because you're going to buy the land anyways. You contractually, you have it tied up. It's your land as long as you execute. Where the risk comes into play is if you're not going to execute. But if you know you're going to buy it and you're going to go after getting a construction loan on this, then you need to commit to it. You're just buying time. So actually you're reducing your liability. You're not increasing your liability, you're decreasing it because you're less money out of pocket. So you got to change your mind frame from saying, oh my God, I'm putting money into a property I don't even own. No, you control the property. It's an escrow, it's legally tied up. And if they do, and you put in your contractual agreement, we have our attorneys make sure it's spelled out in there that if the seller themselves backs out of that contractual agreement, they owe us the money that we've put into this stuff, okay? And we get a full refund of our escrow deposit. But they want to sell it. You want to buy it, and contractually you're in it. And so we've never had a seller retract from us. That doesn't mean that it can't happen. It can. It just never has happened, because once we go in contractually, we're not buying a piece of land that someone doesn't want to sell. We're buying a piece of land that somebody wants to sell. And typically it's a piece of land that someone inherited or they've owned for a long time. They paid $100,000, $200,000. They're selling it for $1.5 million. They're making a mint. They're making a pretty penny on it. They want to see you succeed. So then we start going after, and you guys know that if we have $600,000 that we have made in our single family sector that we didn't spend on cars, fancy houses, lavish vacations, and all the other dumb shit that people buy, then we have that capital to be able to utilize on what's called entitlements. And entitlements are going to cost you someplace in the neighborhood about $300,000. Now you can either raise that capital or you can have that capital. So for those of you guys say, Jerome, I don't want to build houses, I just want to get straight into the multifamily space. Well, then you don't have to. But you can get into it. You're going to have a sponsor that gives you the bandwidth, has the knowledge and experience that has been in the space. You'll have to partner with them initially, but once you've partnered with them once, twice, 2, 3 times, then you yourself can go out and do it as a sponsor, as a general partner, and you can do it on your own. But there is a barrier of entry for this stuff. So when you're scaling from residential to commercial, you have that $600,000, $100,000 is tied up in the land, $300,000 gets tied up in entitlements, engineers, architects, and then that set of blueprints, ladies and gentlemen, that you get is your money. That's money in the bank. Because now you could take that entitled piece of property with a full set of architectural and engineered blueprints to your lender. And the lender now has something tangible that they can appraise. When the lender has something tangible that they can appraise, now that holds value, completed. So now they have something they can say, okay, this land has the allowance from the city. It's contractually ready to go. It meets building codes and execution. So now they have something that you can hire a GC to build, and they can appraise it based on fair market value of what's going on around them. And so then the appraiser comes back with the appraisal. You go back in for lending, and what ends up happening is is you go to the closing table with what's called interest reserve. And so typically we land up raising capital for interest reserve, but we go in and on our first draw, we get the land paid off. Now, here's the caveat to the market right now with real lending. Right now, lenders are only lending 75% of the land value where they were lending up to 100% of the land value just a year and a half ago. They're not doing that anymore. Banking's a little tighter. So this is where you have to go in and raise capital or put more money into interest reserve, okay? Now, typically at this point, we will exit out our investors that came in on the land, if we have any at all. A lot of times if we haven't purchased the land and we just have the land tied up, we don't even have investors yet. So this is where we'll come in and this is where we'll raise a little bit of capital. Now, some people are thinking, well, Jerome, I know a buddy of mine that's doing syndications and they're buying these like $20 million buildings and they're having to raise like $5 million to buy these $20 million buildings and to be able to come up with a down payment to purchase them. What's great about the land deal going into development is you typically have to raise your interest reserve and you have to hold your bandwidth of down payment on what's called loan to cost, and it's the loan amount versus the cost to build the actual asset. And so we typically go to the bank with retail costs, okay? And then when we go and we execute the build on wholesale costs, on a building cost, on what the raw costs are to really build that asset. But for lending perspectives, we go in with retail values because it could cost retail values, right? And so the lenders know, the lender wants one thing. And if you guys want to comment on this in the comment section, what does the lender want? When they give you money, what does the lender want? Think about it for a second. They want it completed because an empty building that's incomplete is worthless to a bank. Think about it like this, guys. There's retail right here. If that Subway store is not in that building and ain't paying rent, it's worthless. If this Walgreens behind me over here is vacant, that building is worthless. If this sports facility here is empty, it's worthless. So the biggest thing is investors, bankers, they want filled assets that are income producing. So one of the things that they want is they want a guarantee, but they want revenue, because revenue is the best guarantee a bank has. So they want a finished asset that can be leased. And if the asset's not finished and it can't be leased, it's worth zero to the bank. Okay, so one of the biggest things the bank wants is they want a finished and completed project. So when you say, well, is the bank willing to lend on retail values to build? Yeah, they're willing to. You just have to show that that truly is the expense and the cost to build. And when you show that that truly is the expense and cost to build based on retail values, you're going to be able to get lending on that stuff. And so when you do that, you're able to scale from residential to commercial, because now you get a commercial construction loan, and then you start moving into the commercial sector. And it's all in the entitlements, ladies and gentlemen. And that's how we scaled into the commercial sector from residential. Was we went out and we facilitated residential builds where we were making over $100,000 per build. We took that money and we literally did it exactly the way I just explained to you guys. And so if you're just watching this now, I want you guys to go back, rewatch the whole video, comment, hashtag repeat. And then if you like the content that we're producing, giving you guys information and knowledge on, then smash that thumbs up button. Click and subscribe to our YouTube channel and just give us a little bit of love and let us know. And if you don't like it, tell us why, give us a thumbs down, and pound me a little bit and say, Jerome, what you're talking about is garbage, right? Now, I think the contrary, and we don't get very many thumbs down. In fact, I don't think we've ever gotten a thumbs down. Maybe we have, probably have. But what you'll realize is that what I'm telling you guys is very viable, feasible, and economically tangible for almost all of you guys if you guys understand the step-by-step process. And obviously I can't give you a PhD in a 30-minute video, but I can give you guys the direction to take to start educating yourself to get there. And that's the key perspective, ladies and gentlemen. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to scale from residential to commercial, or residential single family to multifamily, it's not a hard repositioning. It's just learning the banking. That's the key component, is learning what banks are in need of in order for you guys to be able to get money from the bank in order to execute in the commercial space. And once you figure that out, exactly the way I explained to you guys, it's all in the entitlements, in the plans, the set of plans. That's why I'm holding my hands like this, because typically a roll of plans that is about that thick, that you're going to need to take to your lender to be able to go out and execute and get money to be able to scale into it. Now, some of you guys, it's IRS late fees only 5% per month. Yeah, I mean 5% per month is, think about that on an annualized basis, which is 6% a year. Oh, 0.5% per month. Yeah, I don't remember what it is. I pay my taxes now. I don't even worry about that. I know that the penalties are more expensive than the interest, Harrison, and you can negotiate one of them. I know that for sure. I haven't had to do that in years. But when I first started, I'm just telling you guys, that's why I tell you guys, consult with your CPAs, consult with your tax attorneys and CPAs, because they will tell you these numbers that Harrison's quoting in here in exact magnitudes. At the time when I did this and I scaled, I didn't care what the late fees were. I just knew that I could make more money and scale, keeping my money instead of giving it to the IRS. I knew I had to pay it at some point in time, and when I finally had to pay it, it hurt, but at least it felt better knowing that I was able to take that money and compound it. And that's why my slogan is compound your success, because when you take money and you compound it, it duplicates. And so I just knew that my ability to duplicate my money, putting it into a sector that made sense, made way more sense than paying my tax bill at that time. And I just knew I had to pay it, and I was willing to pay whatever that cost was. And I remember when I paid it, I looked at it, I was like, holy shit, man, it was ridiculous. The penalties and interest were expensive. That's all I remember. But it was way less than the money I made. So it made it worth it. And so if that's your choice and you do it like that, just know that you're gonna pay a price for it on the back end, but you get a good tax attorney, because they'll actually help you hash and save some of that before you actually pay the entire bill, which is what we actually landed up doing. But you guys can do that, and just know that you're gonna have to pay it at some point in time. Don't go into this and say, oh, Jerome said don't pay my taxes and scale up instead of paying my taxes. That's not what I'm telling you guys. I'm just sharing with you guys a story that I did, and I landed up having to pay my taxes the next year, which I did because my dad was my accountant and my dad was on my back, and my dad was in a CPA for 32 years. And so you want to have your dad who is honest, is living day on your back. You don't want to have my dad on your back. And so my dad, I told him what I was doing. He said, okay. He said, just know you have to pay it, and you're going to have a lot of penalties and interest. And I said, okay, no problem, Dad. But all I want to be able to do is I got to build these next set of homes. I got to make more money. I want to be able to get this retail building done. And that's how I did it. And so I told my dad, and my dad was like, okay, I think you're stupid, I think was what he was thinking. You're just a dumb kid, because that's what dads think with their kids a lot of times. And Dad knows best, and most dads do. But in that case, I felt like I was right, and I was right. And so the next year, I paid my penalties and interest, but I scaled. I took my capital, and instead of giving it to the IRS, I took it and I invested it in myself, because I had a roadmap. Now, for some of you guys who don't have a roadmap, don't do this without a roadmap. You guys follow our content, learn from somebody, either learn from me or somebody like me that has that information, and duplicate a process that works. But don't just say, well, Jerome said don't pay my taxes and use my money to go scale. That's not what I'm telling you guys. Then you go end up wasting your money or losing your money. Don't do that. Learn from somebody who has the experience, ladies and gentlemen, and make sure that you guys execute in a fashion that you're executing in either like flex warehouse or apartment buildings. I'll tell you that those two areas are the biggest investment that I'd be investing in if I were anybody out there right now. Flex warehouse and apartment buildings. You guys saw me for the last few years going after warehouse buildings. They're really tough to find to buy, so I bought a few of them, and we searched this country up high and low, and we bought a few of them, a handful of them. We still own them, with the exception of one I sold for a massive profit, which was a home run. It was an old Krispy Kreme warehouse distribution building. I bought it, I leased it, I sold it, made a massive profit. It was awesome. But warehouse, ladies and gentlemen, massive money in warehouse. But you got to build them new, because there's no warehouse out there. There's not enough of it, so you got to build them new. And multifamily, I love multifamily. That's the asset class that is needed. Affordable multifamily, because there's not enough of it out there either. We need over 4.7 million rooftops right now today. We're not even going to catch up on that, ladies and gentlemen. By the time we catch up on that, we're going to need even more, and that's the problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're scaling from residential to commercial, 90% of it is the fact that most people don't have the knowledge of how commercial works or how multifamily works. Educate yourself and go back, rewatch this video, watch it from the beginning to now, hashtag repeat in the comment section once you do that, but take it off one pallet at a time. And commercial is just as hard as residential. In fact, I think it's easier. And you know what I love most about it? It's less risk because you have more doors, more income. And the more doors, more income you have, more profits you have, the safer the investment is. Ladies and gentlemen, continue compounding your success. Again, pound that thumbs up button, click and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time. God bless, and go out and make it a great day. Cool, Sean. I'll see you in Vegas, man. If you guys haven't bought a ticket here to our Build Wealth Summit, you're going to want to be there in Vegas, November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We'll see you there. Thank you guys. God bless. You guys have a great day.